Part 75. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 741. I want to take his share of the Dark Star. What price do you want? Gu looked at Lin Yi. After hearing Gu's statement, Lin Yi frowned slightly. The Dark Star, the power to jump out of the dark abyss. In other words, if you master the Dark Star, you can match the third calamity of the heavenly immortal path, the void tribulation. Can you travel freely to any world and avoid the threat of world destruction? 1/6 of the Dark Star, this value is hard to estimate. Lin Yi slowly fell into silence, thinking. At this point, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Do you need me to help you kill it? Or just to hold back its energy? I just need you to help me hold back its energy and prevent it from escaping. Of course, you can cause him some damage when you have the chance. Or you can steal the Dark Star when it's appropriate, depending on the actual situation. I'll be responsible for the main battle. From your looks, the lifespan you paid last time has been restored. Lin Yi looked at Gu and said slowly. Is there anything in your dark abyss that can increase lifespan? Gu said calmly without any change, no, because the creatures in our dark abyss are very special. We can extend our lifespan by devouring other dark creatures. So we have always been immortal. We can continuously restore the consumed lifespan by continuously devouring others. Hearing this, Lin Yi was also a little surprised. But he immediately had an idea in his mind. This is a good place to get longevity. Then first I want your lifespan of 90,000 years. Secondly, I want to see if you have anything valuable on you. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Gu's face remained unchanged and he slowly waved his hand. Countless things appeared on the ground of the Wanchaiwu. All kinds of black crystals, metals, or bones, and even some special flesh and blood. There are even some black armor, weapons, etc. This is what I collected, all the valuable things in the dark abyss. You can take a look and see which ones you need. Lin Yi's eyes flashed with the light of the True Destiny solution, constantly scanning these items. He was quickly analyzing the properties of these things and the mysteries in them. The True Destiny solution quickly analyzed these things, and Lin Yi found many useful things in them. With a slight raise of his hand, an invisible force instantly enveloped these items. 1/3 of the items slowly floated up and gathered on Lin Yi's desk. There are about 50 items in this 1/3, which are basically various materials, even plants, flesh and blood, etc. There is no finished product. In Lin Yi's eyes, those swords and armors are too low level. All the materials selected by Lin Yi contain the characteristics of the abyss. That is pure darkness, the source of all darkness, which is the characteristic of the abyss. Among these materials, the dark flesh and blood made him very interested. Moreover, the dark flesh and blood also contain great activity and strong vitality. It is not a completely dead thing, and this kind of flesh and blood also contains strong corrosiveness. This corrosiveness seems to have some assimilation properties, which can be used to corrode other life forms. He had an idea in his mind, maybe we can study a way to increase the power of ordinary people. It is faster and more efficient. For those who want to become stronger in the future, this is a good way. Those minerals and metal crystals representing the nature of darkness can also be used to refine various magic tools. If Lin Yi's Wanchaiwu wants to do business in countless worlds, it must have all kinds of things. Facing the lives of one world after another, the Wanchaiwu is still in the accumulation period. The Abyss is an extremely powerful world, and has been listed by Lin Yi as a key trading target in the future. After collecting all the various materials, a note appeared in front of Gu. This is our contract. Lin Yi looked at Gu calmly. Taking the note, Gu just glanced at it casually and wrote his name on it. The note ignited without wind, and a force connected him and Lin Yi. At this time, his eyes looked at Lin Yi. You seem to have changed the world. Lin Yi nodded, Yes, I am in another world now. This world is very strange. I feel that it is always devouring the essence of power that is emanating. The essence of darkness emanating from my breath is constantly disappearing. This world is quite dangerous. Why did you appear in this world? Lin Yi smiled, nothing, I just accidentally entered here when traveling through time and space. Gu nodded, this place is similar to some legends of distant times that I have heard of. Legend? What kind of legend? Among countless worlds, the Dark Abyss is just one of them. Although we are a powerful world, we are not the most powerful. There is a legend circulating in the infinite world. The world will eventually perish, and everything will come to an end. All the essence of the world will be lost after countless ages. Eternity will disappear from the world. And the world after it disappears will no longer have extraordinary power. Everything will go to death. The world you are in seems to be going to death. Hearing Gu's words, Lin Yi's eyes showed a trace of solemnity. He had seen the strangeness of land seeing, and he was thinking about it when he heard Gu's words. But he was also a little strange, because according to Gu's words, it should be impossible for such a world to have any supernatural power. But the martial arts of this world have taken a completely new path. The only difference is that the martial arts system of this world is completely based on the human body itself. Based on the human body, it develops spiritual power, and finally communicates with the mind to release extraordinary power. Thinking of this, he looked at Gu and said calmly, what is the essence of the world? Gu looked at Lin Yi calmly and slowly raised his right hand. A ball of darkness appeared there, and then the darkness slowly faded away, revealing a trace of invisible power. Seeing this bit of power, Lin Yi understood in his heart, sure enough, the essence of the world is spirituality. This world has no spirituality, so its power system is completely based on pure material and spiritual composition. Abandoning the power system of the essence of the world. But there is a question, what kind of power is the power of the mind? It can ignore the dryness of the essence of the world, combine matter and spirit, and finally exert supernatural power. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 742. The power of the soul is a power that Lin Yi has always found strange. This is a power that is completely different from spiritual energy and has too many magical features. In one sentence, it's a bit like having all your wishes come true. What you think in your mind can become a reality and become a real existence. Lin Yi shook his head when he thought of this. Regardless of whether the world was like this or not, it didn't have much impact on him. Anyway, as long as he accumulates enough strange power, he can leave this world. He looked at Gu, then when will our transaction begin? Start now. After saying that, Gu had slowly stood up and stood in front of the door of Wanqi house. Outside in the darkness, a strange tentacle spread out and wrapped around his lower body. Then, he disappeared into the darkness and could be seen in Lin Yi's eyes. Outside there was a huge creature that was 100 meters long, looking like an extra long lizard. But its limbs are very developed, and its whole body is covered with black scales. At this time, Gu had disappeared into the monster's mouth, and the monster seemed to be some kind of weapon for him. Under the light of the true life principle, Lin Yi could see through its entire body. There are at least 9 groups of pitch black light in this body, and each group of light can rival a true master of the celestial way. The pure power is very huge, and these 9 forces are all connected to the monster's head. All the power was integrated with Gu, raising his combat effectiveness to the extreme. Vaguely, Kailan saw the same principle as an exoskeleton, using external power to improve the body. Lin Yi glanced at the Wanqiwu View. Brandy, I'm going to be out for a while, and the Wanqiwu View will be left to you. If there are any enemies that you can't resist, go to Shirley Sakuramiya. With her here, most of the enemies can be dealt with. Brandy nodded solemnly. This contract mission would obviously be very dangerous. At this time, Lin Yi's body had quietly separated from his human immortal body. He had no intention of involving his own body in this mission. After all, this time he was going to fight against a being at the level of an immortal, so he had to leave a way out. His true body quietly appeared in the bedroom, and a trace of his soul clone had already appeared in the immortal body. After coming to this world, he didn't just become a clone. Another soul seed was also refined and integrated into the human immortal body, just to cope with such moments. A world of darkness slowly came over, and Lin Yi's immortal body turned into a dark golden color. In this abyssal world, gold is so dazzling. In this darkness, the nearby abyss creatures were surprised, because the color gold almost never appeared in the dark abyss. However, the surrounding abyssal creatures are all weak beings, and the most powerful ones are only at the level of ghosts and immortals. And after noticing Gu's existence, they would stay away from here. Gu looked at Lin Yi and said slowly, "You have to change your power. In the abyss, any unusual color will be very noticeable. In the dark abyss, there is only one reason why other colors appear. That's an outsider from another world." Hearing this, Lin Yi nodded, and the next moment, a deep darkness spread out from his body, covering him completely. In the body of the giant lizard, Gu looked at Lin Yi calmly, but his heart was not calm at all. Because the power Lin Yi showed was the power of pure darkness. The exact same power as the dark abyss, the power of abyssalization. He can actually control the power of our world. This guy is really scary. But it can be used by me, so the stronger it is, the better. Although the price you need to pay is not small, it is worth it. After being completely shrouded in darkness, Lin Yi looked at Gu. "Where should we go next?" Gu's voice sounded slowly, "Follow me." As soon as he finished speaking, the huge lizard began to run forward. Every movement of the huge body was like a natural disaster, and the earth was shaking. The rocks and trees that were stepped on by the huge solace would be instantly dented. Lin Yi's whole body was filled with a faint dark force field, which turned into a black mist and followed him. His eyes shone with the brilliance of the true interpretation of life, constantly observing the entire dark abyss. The plants and creatures here were strange, none of which he had ever seen before. Almost everyone has various levels of power. The weakest ones all have the aura of human immortality level, and the most powerful one is an existence like Gu. However, he has only seen one existence like Gu so far, and that is Gu himself. I haven't seen any of the others. Obviously, they are at the heavenly immortal level and have high-end combat power in this world. The earth and mountains slid past quickly at the speed of the two of them, and Gu's actions attracted the attention of many dark abyss beings. It also caused the death of countless dark abyss creatures. Wherever it passed, a large number of dark abyss creatures fled in all directions, not daring to stay here at all. Their speed is very fast, and they will move thousands of meters every second. An hour later, they were more than 3,000 kilometers away. A huge mountain range appeared there. The mountain range had no end in sight. Deep in the mountain range, there was a huge dark tree that was very conspicuous. Lin Yi estimated that the diameter of the tree was at least more than 3 kilometers, and the height was so high that it could not be seen at a glance, rising into the clouds. Countless branches grew on it, with dense black leaves, which were very lush. Each leaf was 2 or 3 meters in size, and on some of the leaves, black cocoon-like things could be seen. In Lin Yi's eyes, the inside of those things was clearly visible. It was a dark creature about 50 centimeters in size. It was similar in size to a monkey, covered with smooth scales, and its body and hands and feet were very sturdy, with clear muscle outlines. Its head was similar to that of a canine, with a big mouth full of fangs, and it was resting in nests. And on this big tree, there were various other abyss creatures. Some of them lived on leaves, and some lived inside trees. There are many pipes and cavities inside this tree, and a large number of abyssal creatures of different kinds live inside. Each of them is filled with dangerous auras, and there are fights between them. What attracts Lin Yi's attention the most is not these creatures, but the tree itself. This tree itself is filled with the terrifying power of the heavenly immortal Dao level. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 743. Gu slowly stopped outside the mountain range, staring at the tree with cold eyes, and a solemn voice slowly sounded. This is our target, the Dark Lord, the ancient Tree King. The Dark Star is in his lair. This giant tree is the shell it shed in the past, and it is also its current lair. In Lin Yi's eyes, the true destiny solution was running to the extreme, and in an instant, he saw through everything about the ancient Tree King. A little black wonderful substance existed inside it, connected with all the power of the ancient Tree King. And next to this black substance, there was a tree man covered with wrinkles. He held the black substance in his right hand, and a stream of power permeated his body, blending with the black substance. This black substance should be the Dark Star. He seemed to be absorbing the Dark Star and turning it into his own power. Lin Yi turned his head and looked at Gu. There is a humanoid figure that seems to be made of trees, absorbing this dark mysterious substance. The power contained in that substance is very strong, and I feel scared when I see it. That thing should be the Dark Star you are looking for. Hearing this, Gu's eyes flashed with a glimmer and smiled slightly. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. I will come to provoke you directly later, and wait until we start fighting. I'm most annoyed that Manager Lin waits for an opportunity to attack. If he leaves the Dark Star in the nest, Manager Lin will help me steal it out. I will do my best to hold this guy back. If he doesn't leave it, please ask Manager Lin to wait for an opportunity to attack. Lin Yi nodded, that's no problem. Okay, then I'll start. As soon as the voice fell, Gu had already started to act. Endless darkness rose from his body, connected to the huge lizard outside his body. The next moment, the scales around the lizard seemed to crystallize, spreading out pieces of black crystals. The crystal covered it, like a layer of crystal armor, and the next moment, it had already launched a charge. The huge body twisted, slithering on the ground like a snake. At the same time, its four legs also slid like wood pulp. It rushed towards the mountains at an extremely alarming speed, and rushed directly to the huge tree dozens of kilometers away. At this time, a harsh noise sounded from the trees, which were the screams of countless creatures feeling the danger. But what greeted them was a loud roar and a huge black beam of light. The huge black lizard opened its mouth, and a terrifying black light gushed out. It attacked the big tree directly, and the black light was filled with a terrifying atmosphere. Facing this sudden attack, the branches above the giant tree began to tremble violently. It fell around the trunk and intertwined into a black wall in front of the black light column. The black light directly hit the wall composed of countless branches. The horrible collision exploded in an instant, and the black mushroom cloud slowly rose. The area of thousands of meters was shrouded in the huge explosion. An angry voice sounded from the big tree. The despicable reptile is here again. You deserve to die. As he said that, a tree man wrapped in black light stepped out of the big tree. This tree man was only 3 meters tall, with countless branches and leaves all over his body. His whole body was made of wood and covered with mottled bark. There was a face on his head, and he looked very angry at this time. Gu was less than 5 kilometers away from the giant tree, and he was about to rush under the giant tree. At this time, the tree man suddenly waved his hand, and countless branches fell from the giant tree, like whips, slapping the oncoming giant lizard. Countless whips fell heavily on the ground. With a huge body of hundreds of meters, the lizard was as flexible as a fat man. It passed through the gap between the branches in an instant, but its impact speed slowed down involuntarily. At this time, countless scales around her body have stood up, like sharp blades. Each scale is several meters long, and his body rolled wildly while moving. The branches that accidentally entangled it would be cut off in the next moment. This is not the first time that the two of them have fought. Gu knew the power of these branches very well, and had already prepared a way to break them. There were thousands of branches falling down from the sky. When the fallen branches hit the ground, deep gullies would appear. The collision between the two continued to occur in pure physical combat. The collision range of hundreds of meters completely turned into a natural disaster. Gu controlled his lizard, surrounded the giant tree, and continuously launched attacks. Black light spurted out, exploding one wave after another, and countless branches were torn into pieces and turned into powder in the impact. But the branches falling from this tree are endless, and at this time, a large number of branches are gathering in the sky, turning into two giant hands. It is like a dark cloud covering hundreds of meters of the sky, and suddenly slapping the huge lizard on the ground. It is like two human hands trying to kill a lizard crawling around. Lin Yi watched this scene quietly, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. This is the first time he has seen a battle between Tianxiandao level strongmen outside the Honglian realm. In terms of pure power, they far surpass the masters of the first and second levels of the heavenly immortal Dao. However, the immortals practiced immunity to all damage, although their attacks seemed very powerful. But as long as they practiced to the second level of the heavenly immortal Dao, they would be immune to all their attacks. Unless their attacks contain the power of space. But at present, it seems that the attacks of these two people are pure physical and energy collisions, and space has not yet been involved. After all, the power of space is very high-end in most worlds, and even the strong men at the level of the heavenly immortal Dao may not be able to master it. This is a problem of realm, not a problem of power itself. Lin Yi vaguely sensed the difference between the Red Lotus realm and other worlds. Although the volume of this dark abyss seems very large, there are huge creatures hundreds of meters long at any time, and the power it explodes is almost comparable to a nuclear bomb. Even beyond the power of a nuclear bomb, it has a fatal flaw. That is, they pursued physical and energy power too much, but ignored the understanding of realm. Although they have mastered powerful power, they are not immune to the damage caused by this power. In simple terms, they can use this power, but they cannot truly grasp its essence. While the immortal practitioners master this power, they also understand the essence of the power, so that this power cannot have any effect on them. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 744. This is the difference in the way of understanding power, a gap in the foundation. Lin Yi shook his head with all his thoughts in his heart. This kind of power is strong, but it can't really lead to eternal life. When encountering a stronger existence, it can only go to death. There is always a mountain higher than the one in this world. Who can say that they are invincible? His eyes have swept across the battlefield and looked in the direction of the tree. In the deepest part of the tree, in a wonderful space, the dark star floated there. That space is full of various forbidden powers. At a glance, there are at least thousands of completely different bands. Anyone who touches this band will immediately alarm the Dark Monarch, the ancient Tree King. However, this kind of ban has no effect on Lin Yi. He quietly performed the true destiny boundless, and the next moment he sank into the ground. Relying on the true destiny Daoji to see through everything, he went to the center of the tree along the ground. The interior of the tree is not a complete material structure, and basically still has a part of spatiality. In other words, this mysterious ancient tree king, his lair is a fortress with spatial power. However, no matter what kind of power it is, it cannot stop the true destiny, which has the most powerful penetrating power in the world and ignores the effects of all forces. A few minutes later, Lin Yi had already arrived at the bottom of the giant tree. He stood in an internal pipe with a diameter of about 2 meters, winding upward. There are many such pipes inside the tree, which are intertwined to form an internal circulation network. A huge roar surged from the bottom of the pipe. Lin Yi turned his head and looked behind him. A dark and deep energy torrent was drawn up from the ground and spread along the pipe to various parts of the tree. At this time, the whole tree was trembling slightly, as if the battle outside had affected here. Lin Yi was submerged by the black energy light, but these energy lights just passed through his body calmly. They could not touch him at all. He continued to walk towards the tree, and his feet were dozens of meters away. About a few minutes later, he had arrived outside that wonderful space. This is a huge empty cave, about 100 meters long and wide, a bowl-shaped space with a diameter of about 100 meters. The 4 walls here are connected to pipes of different sizes. A large amount of energy will rush in here, and then flow to other places through some pipes. This place is like an energy node, and it doesn't look special. But in Lin Yi's eyes, there is another layer in this space, which is a space on another level. The light of the true destiny flickered, and time and space could not stop his steps. The next moment, he seemed to pass through a layer of film and came to a brand new dark space. This place is very huge, at least thousands of square meters at a glance. Layers of light stood in front of him, forming a huge band, and it was impossible to see what was inside. But in Ling Yi's eyes, everything was clearly visible. There were thousands of layers of bands, each layer was densely covered with black mysterious words. It was extremely detailed, and the words were connected to each other. The power of the entire tree is completely integrated. If you want to break these bands, you must first have the power to destroy the entire tree. But this tree is 3 kilometers in diameter and more than 10 kilometers in height, just like a mountain. To destroy such a huge monster, even if it is a nuclear bomb, it may take dozens or hundreds of nuclear bombs to do it. Although the Tianxiandao is powerful, it can't do this. This is where the creatures in this world are powerful. The sheer size makes it difficult to be completely destroyed. But Lin Yi didn't come here to destroy this tree, but just to get the Dark Star. The true destiny without boundaries continued to launch, and the next moment, he had stepped into the 1,000-layer seal. Without any obstruction or any power, he easily stepped into this world. The power of the true destiny without boundaries is really terrifying, a completely bug-level existence. At this time, while Lin Yi was constantly using the true destiny, he had vaguely sensed the power essence of the true destiny. Lingbo seems to be a wonderful spiritual power. It can be produced naturally from the true destiny, or it can be taken away from their bodies by killing strange beings. Or it can be stripped from the essence of strange beings. Indistinctly, there is a guess about strange beings. Could it be that the essence of strangeness is also some kind of existence at the spiritual level? Then why do strange beings invade the world and kill living beings? Is it for the power of the soul, just like me? Thinking in his heart, he stood in the middle of the 1,000 layers of prohibition. A dark power floated in front of him, and the light of the true destiny was observing this dark. This dark contains an unimaginable amount of energy, pure without a trace of impurities. And most importantly, this energy is not just pure energy. It flickers with matter, energy, time, space, and even some fluctuations of the soul. This is a group of objects composed of 5 kinds of matter, perfectly and harmoniously. Suddenly, Lin Yi thought of something similar. The treasure of the universe in his hand is the same as this thing, containing 5 kinds of innate basic world power. However, the treasure of the universe contains information, while the dark star in front of him is pure power. And this group of power can be absorbed, just from the volume. This group of darkness is more than 10 times the total power of Lin Yi's Tianxiandao body and clone. Lin Yi felt a little shocked by this dark star. However, he was not shocked for long, and soon came back to his senses. He raised his hand slightly, and a deep dark golden power flowed out. Under his control, the dark golden power turned into countless wonderful structures. It was a three-dimensional ceiling formation, originating from an unfamiliar sect in the Red Lotus realm. In an instant, the formation suddenly shrank, and a black crystal slowly fell and appeared in his hand. Lin Yi raised his hand and took the crystal in his hand. He could feel the majestic energy in the crystal. The true destiny covered the crystal, and he turned and walked outside. Without a sound or a trace, the dark star had already fallen into his hands, without even causing any change. A minute later, he had already appeared in a distant part of the battlefield. A thought silently connected to Gu. The thing is already in hand. The house of everything I created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 745. The latest chapter of the Wanchai I created is updated the fastest. In the huge lizard, Gu's main body was shocked when he heard Lin Yi's words. He knew the power in this ancient tree, and the dark star was definitely under the most stringent protection. Although the ancient tree king in front of him came out to fight, he was always paying attention to the dark star. If someone really touched its power, the ancient tree king would immediately return to his nest and block the invader inside. But now the ancient tree king did not find that the dark star had been lost, which made Gu feel very shocked. For this Lin Yi, he felt a little awe in his heart, which was awe of the mysterious and unknown power. He asked himself that he could not do this. The huge lizard, with blade-like scales covering its body, suddenly exploded. Billions of black crystal scales, like a storm of sword energy, rushed towards the whole tree. In an instant, all the waving branches in front of it were chopped, and hundreds of square meters were vacated in front. The next moment, the giant lizard suddenly turned over and went away. Gu walked very fast, without any drag, and was already 1,000 meters away in a flash. The ancient tree king looked at Gu, who was quickly going away, and there was a strange look in his eyes. Hey, why did this guy walk so fast this time? Every time before, he had to fight with me for a long time. Somehow, the ancient tree king had a bad premonition in his heart. He turned his head and looked at his nest. In a flash, he returned to his nest, looking at the area sealed by thousands of layers of seals in front of him. He walked in one step. When these seals met him, they would naturally make way for him to enter. When the ancient tree king stepped into the core of the seal, he saw an empty space. His heart was hit hard, and the whole person was suddenly stunned. His mind was blank. How is it possible? How is it possible? This is the core of the seal. Who can steal my things without touching the seal? Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. The next moment, the ancient tree king immediately realized what was going on. Damn it, that stinky lizard has accomplices. The ancient tree king was so angry that he was like a Buddha ascending to heaven and two Buddhas going out of the wall. The flames of anger appeared on his head, and it was pitch black. I will kill you. Ah, it hurts me too. Then, the ancient tree king's nest began to shake violently. The huge ancient tree trembled wildly. Then the giant tree began to move unbelievably. Countless roots rose from the ground, and countless cracks appeared in the entire mountain range in an instant. These roots quickly entangled with each other and turned into two huge legs. Countless branches and leaves on the ancient tree fell down, entangled together, and turned into two giant hands. Countless creatures on the giant tree were trembling, and they felt the anger from the ancient tree king. That was the anger that wanted to destroy everything. A piece of black inexplicable fire gushed out from the pipes of this huge tree. Rumble. As if a nuclear bomb exploded, the area within a radius of dozens of miles was swept by flames, and everything was burned to black ashes. A huge tree man tens of kilometers tall took a step. One step was more than 10 kilometers, and the ancient tree king controlled his own nest, chasing in the direction where Gu disappeared. At the same time, two black lights penetrated the void at the head of this huge tree man. Sweeping the world ahead, it seemed to search the heavens, looking for all traces related to Gu. At this time, 100 kilometers away, Gu and Lin Yi were facing each other. Looking at the crystal in Lin Yi's hand, Gu's face showed an irrepressible smile. Ha ha ha, asking Manager Lin to help should be the wisest decision of my life. Now, let's complete the last contract. Lin Yi gently threw the crystal to Gu, although the dark star sealed in the crystal was very precious. But he didn't care much about it. The different nature of the power made it difficult for him to absorb it easily. And with the constraints of the contract, he didn't want to break his style of doing things. And the most important thing is that he didn't actually need this power. As a civilized person, it is very important to keep his word, at least for him. As the crystal fell into Gu's hands, wisps of milky white smoke floated out of his body and quickly gathered in front of Lin Yi, turning into a life crystal the size of a human head. He put away the life crystal casually, and his eyes fell on Gu in front of him. At this time, Gu's skin showed obvious aging, and it seemed that he had entered old age from his prime in an instant. There was a faint aura of death on his body, and the stripping of life seemed to be not without harm to him. Gu also noticed the changes in himself. He took a deep breath, and a trace of solemnity appeared in his eyes. He felt an indescribable weakness in his body. This weakness is aging, and he felt this feeling of weakness for the first time. Taking a deep breath, he knew that he would need to spend a lot of time to recover his lost lifespan. At this time, Lin Yi looked at him calmly. Thank you so much for your patronage. You can come to me again if you need anything next time. A note appeared silently in front of Gu and finally fell into his hands. At the same time, a huge roar came from hundreds of kilometers away. The huge tree man stepped across the sky, and his step was more than 10 kilometers. The terrifying black flames turned the area of dozens of kilometers ahead into ashes. Lin Yi had a faint smile on his face. He, it seems that you have to run away quickly, the Dark Monarch has caught up. Gu nodded without changing his expression. It's time to leave, so see you next time. As soon as the voice fell, the tongue connected to Gu suddenly retracted, and disappeared into the giant lizard's mouth with Gu. At the same time, the door of the Wanchaiwu appeared behind Lin Yi. A few notes appeared in his hand, and he raised his hand and waved it lightly. These notes have been floating in all directions with a dark energy. This energy turned into a black whirlwind, rolled up these notes, and will fly to the distance until the energy is exhausted. At this time, the huge tree man was less than 20 kilometers away from here. Two black lights had already spotted Lin Yi and the giant lizard that was about to leave. Angry howls rang in their ears. We found you, die. Two huge arms had already slapped them, and endless black flames spread from the arms. But Lin Yi was not interested in staying here and fighting to the death with such an existence, so he stepped into the gate and disappeared. Just as he left. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 746. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. A huge palm has slapped the place where he just stood. Boom boom. The boundless flames and huge power smashed the ground into a black pit like glass. At this time, Gu and his giant lizard had already left this area. He rushed to a distant place without looking back, without stopping at all. I must kill you. Accompanied by a roar, the ancient tree king's body, which was tens of kilometers high, had already jumped and chased in the direction of Gu's escape. A war that swept the entire dark abyss was unfolding, attracting the attention of countless great beings. But all this had nothing to do with Lin Yi. When he returned to the Wanchaiwu, he was surprised to find something. Brandy was the only one in the Wanchaiwu. Lin Yi looked at Brandy. What's going on? Brandy saw Lin Yi coming back and walked over with a smile on his face. Manager, you don't know that after you left, the wish shrine was activated several times. Several people from different worlds came to the Wanchaiwu. We listened to his wish and felt that everyone could fulfill it. And they are all willing to pay a good price, so vodka, whiskey, Laowei, and others all signed a contract to complete the task. Lin Yi heard this and suddenly realized, that's great. The Wanchaiwu has finally started to operate normally. After the human immortal clone returned, he went directly back to the bedroom. There, Lin Yi's main body was still watching the catastrophe of all things. This is a very long process that takes a long time to complete. It is the only way for the spirit to be immune to material damage. At this time, Lin Yi's clone walked towards his bed, and the main body on the bed took a step and entered the dantian of the human immortal clone. Then, the human immortal clone sat cross-legged on the bed in the bedroom and fell into a deep silence. At this time, in the living room of the Wanchaiwu, the boxing clone of the Blue Star world slowly opened his eyes. In his mind, there are 12 Dao marks in total, which vaguely form a three-dimensional structure in his mind. An invisible information is slowly circulating in the structure formed by these 12 Dao marks. Lin Yi has seen the Dao mark structure in Shen Wuofang's mind, and roughly understands the direction of the boxing to a higher level. And combined with his own deduction, he has also explored a perfect system, but this system requires a lot of time to complete. He looked out of the French window. The bustling streets had long been dim, only the street lights were flickering, and the world fell into a strange calm. If you want to practice to a higher level, there is a long way to go. The seeds must be peeled and spread out little by little to make the Wanchaiwu run completely. All kinds of talents are constantly circulating in my hands, and I will have more and more Dao marks. Time, everything takes time to complete. In a secret residence in Jingguan City, Tan Minglong, who has completely become a young man, is quietly practicing here. He sat cross-legged with his 5 hearts facing the sky, with an alloy sword on his palms. At this time, his spirit was undergoing drastic changes. His spirit, which had aged over time, had recovered to its peak state because it had swallowed a large amount of life. At this time, he was completely awakening his spirit and his body, returning to the peak of perfect harmony. His spiritual magnetic field and life magnetic field were perfectly integrated and deeply bound in his body. His cells were trembling slightly, allowing his body to move closer to the peak bit by bit. Martial arts practice is never achieved overnight, and the requirements for the body are very strict. Once the peak state at the age of 30 is missed, the human body will begin to decline, and no means can stop it. It is even more difficult to break through the realm, especially in the absence of spiritual energy in this world. The possibility of the body staying young is even lower. The body cannot maintain a youthful state, which limits the time for martial arts breakthroughs. 30 years old is the limit of breakthrough. Now his body has returned to the peak state of 20 years old. Tan Minglong is converting all the accumulation of decades of mind into his own nourishment. The surging life magnetic field in his body is constantly nourishing his spiritual magnetic field, and the majestic vitality is making his spiritual magnetic field purer and stronger. Indistinctly, he has already felt an invisible barrier blocking his spirit and making the final breakthrough. He needs some pressure. The pressure of death can make him break through the last shackles. At this moment, his heart jumped slightly, and his body instantly fell to the right. Crash. The sound of glass breaking sounded. A bullet passed through the window, past his previous position, and hit the ground accurately. The 15-centimeter thick cement board was penetrated in an instant. Sniper. In an instant, Tan Minglong knew that a gunman was targeting him. And he also knew that this was revenge from the Wang family. Wang Jiadong was killed by him, and he robbed the other party's lifespan and the note. This was planned early. He knew that Wang Jiadong had been in a high position for too long and was on the verge of death. After getting the lifespan crystal, it is highly likely that he will not take it immediately, because the other party will definitely want to study the life crystal and find out the possibility of imitation. He will never allow his fate to be controlled by others. Tan Minglong has known Wang Jiadong for decades and has already figured out this person's character. He is strong and self-centered, domineering and overbearing, and he wants to control everything in his own hands. And he is also very good at controlling his subordinates, using both kindness and force, but there is one thing he can't predict, that is, the greed of the human heart and the desire for life. So the moment he left the Wanchaiwu, Tan Minglong took decisive action and seized the other party's achievements. And the reason why he did not leave Jingguan City was because he wanted to use the power of the Wang family to break through the realm of saints and wisdom. Every martial arts master who can achieve spiritual perfection will never fear danger, on the contrary, they will challenge threats. Everything is for the final breakthrough. After seeing Li Wu's breakthrough, Tan Minglong's heart has long been full of hope, and he longs for the day when he will reach the top. This was his wish for decades, and no one could stop him. Even if it was through mountains of swords and seas of fire, he would go for it. Even giving up his own family was no exception. He knew that the moment he took action, his family in Jingguan City would not be able to escape. Death would be their only two endings, and the other ending would be that he would break through the realm of saintliness and enlightenment. The mind distorts reality, so it can easily deal with all the troubles. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 747. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. Every saintly and wise God-level strongman is irreplaceable, precious, and deterrent. He took a step forward, and the next moment, he was at the gate. Remember the domain name of this site, Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. His palm slammed on the gate, and the terrifying power was transmitted to the gate in an instant. The gate rushed out like a cannonball. At this time, an elite team of 5 people was standing outside the door. Everyone held a light machine gun in his hand, and 2 of them stood in front of the gate. They were holding a door-breaking hammer, intending to blow the door open. But at this moment, the door had already rushed towards them with a roar, and the huge force was exerted to the extreme. In an instant, the door hit the 2 people directly. Bring them to the wall. Puff. A huge amount of blood gushed out, and they fell to the ground in an instant, unable to move. The other 3 people in the team reacted immediately and pulled the trigger. The muzzle of the gun was aimed at the door of the house. But their speed was still slow, and the moment the door flew out, Tan Minglong had already been like a clever monkey, directly to the right side of the door. There were 2 fully armed elite soldiers there. As they fired, he had silently grasped the 2 guns and adjusted the direction of the muzzle to the opposite side. There was the last soldier. Da-da-da. The bullet shot out and instantly penetrated the opponent, and fell to the ground trembling all over. And the next moment, Tan Minglong jumped up like a tiger, opened his hands, and rushed through the 2 soldiers. And the 2 soldiers were hit by Tan Minglong's left and right arms respectively. The huge force was transmitted into their bodies along the contact point. In an instant, their internal organs were all ruptured and they died on the spot. How terrifying is a martial arts master! He has mastered the power to the extreme. Every part of his body is a weapon, and if it is touched, it may be hit by a huge force. In just 5 seconds, 5 elite soldiers died here so easily. At this time, a faint white mist came out of Tan Minglong's body. The method just now was not so simple. He needed to make the right judgment in an instant and use all his strength at the same time. The mental and physical consumption far exceeded the usual practice. This is the real combat. Every cell of his felt the danger and became active. At this time, all crises have not ended, but just begun. The house he is in is a corridor apartment. When he solved the 5 soldiers, the whole building was surprised by the sound of gunfire. Every household turned on the lights. Noisy voices continued to ring. What's going on? What's going on? Why is there a gunshot? It was a mess, the whole building was lit up, and countless people looked around through the windows. There were also many people at the gate, observing the situation outside through the cat's eye. Tan Minglong took a deep breath, and a trace of solemnity appeared in his eyes. He could feel a vague spirit locking on him. A master with perfect spirit. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth, then come on, let's see if you are my stepping stone. With a leap, he had already run along the passage towards the stairs. His speed was very fast, and the distance of 100 meters passed in a flash. Those who observed the passage through the cat's eye saw nothing, but seemed to see a figure vaguely. At this time, on the stairs, a man in black casual clothes was climbing the stairs step by step. And just when he came to the staircase platform of this floor, his eyes condensed slightly. Tan Minglong's figure appeared in front of him. The brave wins when they meet on a narrow road. The moment the two saw each other, they started. A huge earthquake broke out on the stairs, and the next moment they collided in mid-air. The two people's mental and physical magnetic fields were completely integrated, and each had reached their own peak. The first collision, a huge force spread out around them. Under the huge force, the air made sonic booms one after another. Rumble. The whole apartment was filled with violent muffled sounds and vibrations, and even the stairs began to collapse during the fight between the two. They rushed all the way to the bottom of the apartment, and every fight was extremely thrilling. Various actions that violated the human body continued to appear, and any place on the stairs would be immediately shattered if they were touched. With a huge muffled sound, Tan Minglong and the man in casual clothes fell to the ground. At this time, the clothes on the two people were already damaged, and their muscles were swollen. Each of them reached a terrifying height of 2.2 or 2.3 meters. One had dark skin, like black steel. The other had purple-black skin, with big tendons sticking out, like steel and iron bones. Both of them had some scars on their bodies, which were obviously caused by the collision just now. Tan Minglong's whole body was full of energy, and he felt that he had found the feeling of his youth again, and his blood was boiling. Opposite him, the man with purple-black skin had a solemn expression. He felt a wave of huge threats from Tan Minglong, and the two people's spirits collided in the air. In their spirits, magnetic fields were constantly colliding. One was like a thunder giant, and the other was like a battlefield warrior holding a fierce knife. The collision of spirits came one after another, and the next moment, they moved again. The purple giant, with a palm the size of a futon, slapped Tan Minglong's head as if slapping a fly. This palm contained the mystery of the spirit, as if it was the creation of the world. In Tan Minglong's eyes, the purple thunder giant and the person in front of him merged into one. In one palm, the thunder of the sky descended. A huge thunder burst out instantly, shaking the soul, and his magnetic field was greatly impacted. Tan Minglong's eyes condensed, and in an instant, the spiritual life magnetic field merged into one. He seemed to have turned into an ancient battlefield warrior, invincible, and unstoppable. The mind that had been trained to the extreme burst out from his fist. Kill, kill, kill. There was no other thought at all, only one word, kill. The violent force, the crazy vibration, tore everything in the world apart. At this time, there was no other thought in Tan Minglong's eyes. There was only the thunder giant in front of him. The fists and palms met, and another huge impact spread to the surroundings. Tan Minglong's body, with the help of the huge force of this palm, he suddenly shrank his body and instantly fell into the arms of the huge thunder giant. At this time, his left elbow had already hit the thunder giant's chest. This elbow hit on the battlefield, it was a fatal blow. When surrounded on the battlefield, he rushed into the arms of the enemy. Meet the enemy with an elbow and smash the enemy's sternum. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Xuanhuan Luan Tianji. Chapter 748. Then with the help of huge power, and with the enemy's corpse as a shield, he rushed out of the enemy's encirclement and cut a bloody path. At this time, there were walls on both sides behind Tan Minglong, which was in line with the state of being besieged on the battlefield. An invisible pressure made his attack more powerful. The man in front of him was his only breakthrough. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. He also used his killer move to create a desperate situation mentally with the help of this environment, thus bursting out all his potential. This attack gathered all the magnetic fields of his spirit and life, and completely integrated them into one. One hit to the chest, and the next moment it blasted out. Rumble. The huge power, crazy vibration, surpassed all attacks. And the man also sensed the crisis in an instant. He didn't expect that the seemingly majestic punch just now. It was just a preparation for this elbow strike. At this time, his right hand was numb from the collision just now. His left hand suddenly pulled back and blocked the elbow strike, with 5 fingers bent like eagle claws. His 5 fingers grabbed the elbow strike, but the elbow strike had a huge force. His 5 fingers could not hold it at all, but his feet were already off the ground. With the help of the force of the left palm contacting the elbow strike, he retreated to the back. In 1 step forward and 1 step back, the purple giant's right hand also regained consciousness at this time. He suddenly pressed down on his left claw, and both palms pressed on the elbow strike at the same time. Bang! A huge muffled sound exploded, and 2 figures suddenly separated at the stairs. The next moment, they stood outside the staircase entrance of this building, where there was a garden. Tan Minglong's eyes showed a trace of solemnity, and his opponent was very sharp. At the critical moment of life and death, the control of the crisis was beyond imagination. A true top martial arts master, and at such a young age, a complete genius young seed. Instantly, he thought of someone. Wang Jiadong's grandson, who was sent to a secret sect to practice since childhood. Wang Donggong, who is known as the first person of the younger generation of the Wang family. Donggong is the place where the ancient prince lived. It can be seen that Wang Jiadong has placed so much hope on this person. At this time, the two were 10 meters apart. Wang Donggong suppressed Tan Minglong with a fatal blow, but he also retreated more than 10 meters under the effect of this force. A siren sounded outside. Tan Minglong had a sneer on his lips, and the next moment, he had stepped to the right into the green belt next to him. His speed was like a tornado, chasing the wind and shadows. Wang Donggong stabilized his body at this time. Seeing Tan Minglong escape, he immediately chased him. His face did not change at all, and he was extremely calm. His speed was as fast as lightning. The two of them left this residential area with just a few jumps and began to chase in the streets and alleys. From time to time, someone would find them, but there was no time to react at all, and they had disappeared in the eyes of these passers-by. Fortunately, it is late at night, and there are few people, so the impact they cause is smaller. And the two of them seem to have the ability to predict the future, and they always naturally avoid the area observed by the monitors. Therefore, the monitors in the entire Jingguan city cannot capture any images of them. This is the power of the mental magnetic field, which can sense various sights, hidden cameras, etc. Just like the thoughts of the Honglian realm and the ghost immortal Dao level, it can observe the existence outside the body in detail. I don't know how long this chase will last. At the same time, wonderful changes are taking place all over the world. In an underground laboratory in the Empire of YZ country, a mutant corpse is normally undergoing various tests in it. At the same time, inhumane experiments are being carried out in laboratories. Some people who were captured from nowhere are being locked up in laboratories. They are tied to the test bench, and some people wearing chemical protective suits are conducting some weird experiments on them. Some black ashes were implanted by these people into various parts of the bodies of those people on the test bench. Then these people began to scream miserably. Some black lines or twisted meridians began to spread on their bodies. Although the spread was not fast, it was visible to the naked eye that these people's bodies were becoming inhuman. It was like some kind of infectious disease, very scary. And some of the subjects in the laboratory had already shown obvious changes. For example, on one of the experimental tables, an experimenter was covered with raised black fascia. His skin was ulcerating, revealing the muscles underneath that had turned black. This person's hair had all fallen out, his whole body was covered with twisted fascia, and his eyes were red. And the weirdest thing was that strands of black liquid were oozing out of his body. These black liquids were very scary, and everything they touched would be severely corroded. At this time, the test bench had been corroded and even the ground had rotten pits. However, this person was not dead yet, and maintained his human will, but was in extreme pain, hitting his head against the ground, as if he was seeking death. In a room in the underground laboratory, there were hundreds of different screens. Each screen corresponds to one of the laboratories, showing the progress of the experiment. At this time, there is a man with a majestic aura. He is the high priest. Looking at the experimental subjects changing on the screen, he noticed the experimental subject with corrosive liquid oozing out of his body. How is the data collection of this experimental subject going? A person who seemed to be the director of this laboratory immediately replied, "Sir, we have conducted detailed research on the corrosive liquid of this experimental subject. It can corrode almost all known substances. Even the most stable elements such as carbon and silicon are no exception. And this corrosion is not a common chemical change. It is an unknown annihilation behavior. Once this liquid comes into contact with any substance, a phenomenon similar to the annihilation of positive and negative matter will occur. It will disappear from this world out of thin air. According to the most basic theory, once matter disappears, it will become energy and be released. The neutralization of positive and negative matter will also generate huge energy. But the annihilation of this black liquid and matter is completely different. This is something beyond our knowledge." The high priest's eyes were gloomy, and his spiritual magnetic field had enveloped the entire laboratory. He could feel that there was a strange substance in the body of each experimental subject, which was constantly spreading. The normal substances in these people's bodies would be assimilated by this strange substance and become part of it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Xuanhuan Tianji. Chapter 749. In one of the laboratories, countless flames were spraying out from the four walls, burning the experimental subjects into ashes. But the black material in the ashes still filled the laboratory and did not disappear. And the quality of those ashes is almost exactly the same as the quality of the infected life forms. It was as if the strange experimental subject had been eliminated, but the strange substance that had been assimilated in his body had not been consumed at all. The great priest showed a hint of solemnity, and this substance made him feel very dangerous. It was an instinctive resistance from the heart. Moreover, this substance seems to be more harmful to heavenly beings and more polluting to their spirits and souls. The existence that seemed to be their natural enemy made the high priest feel vaguely worried. What is going on? Why is there such a thing in the world? I have never seen it before. The age that the great priest has survived in this world has exceeded the limit of human beings. It had been tens of thousands of years, but he had never encountered anything like this. The place where this power appears is Xuanhuan city. and the time of appearance was just after the incident of the aliens. Although country H tries its best to hide it, all major countries in the world should already know about it. Mysterious outsiders have come to this world. Could it be that they brought this power? A hidden worry suddenly arose in the heart of the high priest. Maybe we need to change our target and find this alien from the sky first. Their danger completely exceeds that of humans. There was a hint of solemnity and coldness in his eyes. He looked at the supervisor in the laboratory and said, "Warn everyone, the laboratory is closed. No one is allowed to step outside the laboratory. If you want to leave the laboratory, you have to undergo a month of quarantine. And a comprehensive inspection will be conducted, and no trace of this black substance will be allowed to leave." The supervisor nodded seriously. "It's my lord." In the eyes of the supervisor, there was a vague presence like a black devil. He is also a heavenly being, but he seems to be different from other heavenly beings. What filled his eyes was the radiance of wisdom, although it was dark wisdom, rational and cold. The high priest nodded, turned, and left here. At this time, heavenly beings in various countries around the world, or some human beings, are studying these strange mutants. At this time, Britain and America are at the deepest level of the ultimate laboratory. A tall white man appeared here, his whole body filled with a huge sense of oppression, and he was 5 meters tall. Every part of his body exudes strength. He was wearing a custom-made suit, and his whole person exuded a noble temperament. This is a hero-level existence, the Great Marshal of the United Kingdom and the United States, and the #1 master in the military Rockefest Demogorgon. His eyes were solemnly looking at the big screen in front of him, which showed the experimental subjects in the laboratory. Almost all the experimental subjects inside were transformed into monsters without any intelligence. These people are the garbage of the slums and face the threat of death almost every day. Even if he disappears, no one will care. He is the most suitable experimental subject in this country. Rockefest Demogorgon's eyes were calm, not at all touched by the tragic situation of these people. He looked at the laboratory director next to him. "Mr. Lofi, is it possible that this black substance can be used by us to make biological and chemical weapons?" Hearing this, Lofi shook his head and said, "Not yet. But I am intensifying my research and trying to use restraint tools to tame these mutated monsters. They would be the best weapons if they were available. Fearless of death, madly chasing down all living creatures in sight. He is the most useful soldier on the battlefield. And they can be burned to ashes by fire. No purely physical attack can destroy their bodies. Their bodies will continue to reorganize, even if they are cut into countless pieces. This is a super life form that is unimaginable. It's not that simple to have effective control over them." Rockefest Demogorgon nodded and looked at the experimental monsters with a trace of thought in his eyes. "If this substance can be used, transformed, and absorbed rationally, maybe my body can break through the current physical limits, reach an incredible state and obtain this immortal body. Perhaps there is hope for immortality." There was a hint of expectation in his eyes, as he was a hero of the empire. He practiced the ancient way of chivalry, experienced the baptism of the 7 virtues and the 7 deadly sins, achieved a spiritual breakthrough, reached the realm of saints and heroes, and condensed his own Holy Spirit. In this Western world, he is also the man at the top of the food chain, holding power, wealth, and power. But this is only temporary. In the future, he will eventually grow old and die slowly, just like countless heroes and generals in ancient times. This is something that no one can reverse, and he also wants to live forever. Now that his body can live for at least 250 years, he still has enough time to wait. In this era, he saw the hope of immortality. Life pursues immortality, which is their instinct, even if they step into the level of gods and heroes. He took a deep breath, and a trace of solemnity appeared in his eyes. This place must be closely monitored, and everyone who leaves must be isolated for a month. They are not allowed to carry any of this black substance out of the laboratory. The air circulation must also be isolated from the outside world, understand? The director of the laboratory nodded. Please rest assured, sir, I have turned on the air circulation system. The laboratory has been completely isolated from the outside world, and each laboratory is a separate space, and there will not be any leakage. That's good. If there is any situation, notify me as soon as possible, and I will come to suppress it. The laboratory director's pupils shrank slightly, and he replied respectfully, yes, sir. At this time, not only the United Kingdom and the United States, but also the Rakshasa Empire has studied this black substance. They also obtained some samples through their own channels. And each country itself is also conducting research on this black substance. In a courtyard in the capital of each country, a middle-aged man was sitting here, closing his eyes and falling into deep thought. This is an empty courtyard that looks very natural. His spiritual magnetic field, life magnetic field and the surrounding space are perfectly integrated, and the whole courtyard is full of vitality. The house of everything I created. Author, Xuanhuan Tianji. Chapter 750. As time went by, the trees in the courtyard began to change wonderfully. The trees bloomed, and then the flowers withered within a few hours, and then seeds were produced in the withered places. The seeds also fully grew within a few hours and fell to the ground. Finally, the trees began to wither and the leaves quickly turned yellow and fell to the ground. The leaves and seeds on the ground began to rot and eventually merged into the soil. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow Smoke Ji Woo. At this time, the courtyard seemed to have entered a dead winter. There were no leaves on the trees, and the grass had all dried up. The courtyard went from full of vitality to dead silence, but after a few hours, the trees began to sprout rapidly again. Green leaves reappeared on the trees. The ground also produced grass, which quickly spread throughout the courtyard, making it full of vitality. After 24 hours a day, the whole courtyard seemed to have experienced spring, summer, autumn, and winter. A wonderful magnetic field merged with the entire courtyard. It was the source of spring, summer, autumn, and winter in one day. After experiencing the change of 4 seasons, the mysterious man slowly opened his eyes. It seemed that time was flowing in his eyes, and the power that permeated the entire courtyard flowed back into his body in an instant. He seemed to be the master of time, standing quietly in this courtyard that was completely the same as the original one. At this time, his heart seemed to be moved, and his eyes looked behind him. There was a young man in a black uniform, like a butler, standing there quietly. What's the matter? Sir, we have found the traces of the murderer who killed Wang Jiadong. But what happened to him shocked us very much. We also learned some specific circumstances. The man called Mr. frowned slightly. What's the matter? The butler walked over a few steps and handed him a report. This is a detailed analysis after I observed the information and extracted the important content. The gentleman looked at the report, and his eyebrows jumped after a few minutes. There was a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Is it true or false? It's true. We have videotapes and invited more than a dozen experts from various fields to evaluate and examine it. This person has regained his youth. But he has not yet entered the level of a general. He borrowed external forces, some unknown power. And according to our investigation, there is another person in Jingguan City who has also undergone this change. Is it Li Wu who has been reborn from the ashes? Yes, it's him. He was originally in his 60s or 70s and had no chance of breaking through. But he also experienced the phenomenon of rejuvenation like Tan Ming Long. According to our investigation of the people who attended the meeting on the day of Wang Jiadong's death, the reason for everything is attributed to a man named Lin Yi. He seems to have power beyond our understanding. And we found another old friend of Li Wu besides Tan Ming Long. Wang Ganlong. According to his testimony, Everything is because of the contract signed between Li Wu and Mr. Lin. And there is a man named Jin in the store of the store manager Lin. The first time he appeared should be in Wanjin City, where he was at the peak of the first level of martial arts, such as Kiri, which was beyond imagination. Some time ago, he suddenly came to Jingguan City. But according to our investigation, no travel records of him were found. He seemed to appear out of thin air in Jingguan City, crossing a distance of thousands of kilometers. Therefore, we judge that this store manager Lin was probably also in Wanjin City at first. And he also mastered the mysterious means that allowed ordinary people to enter the first level of martial arts perfection in a short period of time. Combining all this information, we judge. More than a month ago, there was a mysterious visitor who fell from the sky in Wanjin City. The protagonist is the store manager Lin. The gentleman listened to the report of his butler. There was a hint of surprise and great interest in his eyes. Giving people life and rejuvenation, this is something that has never happened in the world. In today's world, no one dares to say he is the first if he says he is second in martial arts. His understanding of the human body has reached the extreme, even clearer than the results of some scientific research. Even quite a number of scientists will draw on his understanding of the body to further understand and study the body. He knew the limits of the human body many years ago. Now everything the housekeeper told him completely broke his common sense and cognition. To do all this, there must be a power beyond understanding. Prepare the plane, I want to go there in person. Meet this mysterious store manager Lin. The housekeeper's body shook slightly when he heard this. Yes, sir. At this time, an old customer came to the Wanchaiwu again. Shen Wuifang looked at Lin Yi. Mr. Lin, these are 8 new celestial relics. I want to exchange life. Looking at the celestial relics, Lin Yi's face was about to show a smile. 80-year life crystal. Okay. After the two signed the contract, an 80-year life crystal appeared in front of Shen Wuifang. Looking at the crystal in front of him, Shen Wuifang immediately picked it up and swallowed it. Feeling the life spread in his body, clearing the decay in his body. He has never been so refreshed as he is now, as if he had just been born into this world. He can feel that his life has exceeded the limit of the human body itself. The result is that his body is very clean. Before his life returns to the human life limit, his body will not deposit any aging and decay. This aging and decay is a very special phenomenon. His mind can feel that this thing is entrenched in his body. But he can't get rid of these things. Only after absorbing new life can he feel the disappearance of these things. The maximum lifespan of a person is 300 years old, because what they call soul cannot exist for more than 300 years. And now he has lived for 50 years. After swallowing a 10-year life, his soul still has 260 years. That invisible power of aging and decay filled the soul of his body. At this time, he had devoured a total of 80 years of life, and he felt that his soul could still exist for more than 340 years. There was no trace of decay in his soul. He could judge that unless his lifespan was reduced to less than 300 years again, the breath of decay would no longer appear in his body. And this brought him an incredible benefit.